And as teachers, we know that assessment goes far beyond measuring performance, right? It can support learning, inform our decisions, and transform the way we teach. Please welcome to the stage Alberto Costa with his talk, Language Assessment Literacy. Hello, Alberto. It's a pleasure to have you here. Say hello
Thank you very
to our
much.
audience.
I just feel I have to be so brave to stand in such a big stage, you know. Thank you.
Well, Alberto, you have been with us for a while, right?
Yes, for
Yes.
almost 11 years.
Almost 11. Wow. Alberto, what's your favorite part of Cambridge Day?
Well, my favorite part of Cambridge Day is interacting with teachers during the coffee break. And when they come to us and say, "Oh, it's so nice that I can see you face to face." And I said, "Yeah, that's really nice. We don't understand the dimension of the amount of people we know. But it's nice that when we meet face to face on Cambridge Days."
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Alberto, the floor is yours. Have a great talk.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Well, Samantha delivered a fantastic talk, and I said, I just feel I have to be so brave to stand here after her talk, and also because it's such a big structure, and I'm trying to make an effort to see most of you. So the topic for today will be language assessment literacy. Assess, inform, and transform. Well, for this session, I'm not going to do it alone. I'm going to ask you to collaborate, and I'm going to give you some pair work for you to discuss, because we are talking about assessment literacy, so it's important as well that I have an idea of how you feel about your assessment awareness, yeah? So I'm going to invite you to share your ideas, reflect, and think about those points. Well, since we are talking about assessment, we cannot start without setting our objectives, because it's part of the assessment to assess what we plan and what we have as clear objectives. So what will you see? What will you know after this session? So these are the objectives. We're going to find out what LAL matters, why LAL matters. LAL, language assessment literacy, yeah? We are also going to see what LAL is, and I'm going to be sharing some references. And also, we're going to investigate how teachers learn about assessment. And that's where I'm going to ask you to collaborate, yeah? Also, because assessment is so important and it's part of a teacher's routine, there are risks when our assessment literacy is insufficient, and we're going to see some of those risks, yeah? And of course, we're going to share some ideas of what you can do to enhance your language assessment literacy. It sounds quite ambitious, but I hope we can make this a bit more down to earth and practical. And what will you do after this session? Well, apparently there's a coffee break, but after the event today, what are you going to do after this session? You're going to access some of the sources and resources on LAL and consider how you can continue to develop your own language assessment literacy, yeah? All right, are you with me on this? Okay, fantastic. So why are we talking about language assessment literacy? First, because assessment is part of what we do, but research on assessment has become more and more frequent and more available, yeah? So why do we talk about language assessment literacy? We talk about it because when we think about language learning and education in general, we are talking about stakeholders. There are so many people involved in this process that we have, sometimes we have no idea. Can you give me examples of some stakeholders that we have in language assessment? Who are the people involved? Teachers. Teachers, well done. Okay, who else? Students, okay, who else? Parents, yeah, by all means, who else? School managers. School managers, who else? Sorry? Okay, I'm going to show you a list, but this is by no means a complete list. It's just a summary of some of the people involved when we talk about language assessment. We have only those few stakeholders, and those are just some of the examples, yeah? Well, we have learners, teachers, parents, we have government and official bodies who actually recognize, for example, certificates and assessment in general. We have the course book writers here, so give a clap to Ben and Samantha, right? They are here. We also have publishers like Cambridge. We have the school owners, managers, administrators, examiners, test center staff. We have our test centers here as well. A clap for them, everyone. They are involved in this process. And I'm sure we have examiners here. Are you a speaking examiner for any center? Raise your hand. Okay, we have quite a few hands up here for the ones who are speaking examiners. Employers as well, who might require a qualification for a language qualification for specific jobs, plus academic researchers in the area, the marketplace, etc., etc., etc. As I said, this is just a short list of the people involved in assessment. So becoming aware of assessment is crucial. And of course, among all those stakeholders, we have us, the teachers, yeah? And when we think that we teachers are in the middle of this crowd here, we have some questions to ask. So one key question is, how much should we know about assessment? Should we know about it? Or should we just do assessment? And how much should we know about assessment? I'm going to give you 13 seconds for you to think about how much we teachers should know about assessment and share an idea with your partner. How much should you know about assessment? Think about it and share some ideas with your partner. So, how much should we know about assessment? A lot? Somebody says a lot? Well, I know this is a tricky question. It's like asking how long is a piece of string, because assessment is such a vast area, but it's important that all the stakeholders have some awareness of assessment, that we teachers need some operational knowledge of assessment, and of course, the more, the merrier, yeah? As I said to you, assessment has been researched more and more, and a lot more content has been made available. So just to give you an idea, I have here 2 volumes from this collection. These are volumes from the Studies in Language Testing, which is one of the published research resources that Cambridge has. And they are, this series here, they address a wide range of important issues about assessment, developments in assessment, yeah? And of course, a lot of teachers or researchers access those resources for their research, or maybe just to become more aware about assessment. By the way, those sources here, they've been available for a long time, but recently you can access the published research because all those volumes are temporarily available for you to download for free. So in case you want to read about assessment research style, these are the volumes that you can access. One important thing about research material is that they are not books that we read from cover to cover, but we go to those volumes for a specific content because we need them or because we are curious about a certain area of assessment. So you can feel free to access the volumes and find out more. If you access the QR code, another source of research on assessment that is available to everyone are the research notes. So one of the things about Cambridge is how transparent the process of assessment is. Everything that Cambridge does has research, and research is made available, so you're all invited to explore those sources. But I'm showing you those two volumes in particular because they are the most recent ones, and both volumes are about language assessment literacy, and there's a lot of interesting content in it. So we're going to look at some of the content here and bring some insights from those articles, yeah? One interesting article that drew my attention in those volumes was this study that was conducted in Chile. And the study was about, not about teachers in particular, but about teacher educators or the teacher trainers who prepare teachers for teaching. Yeah? So the study was about how do teacher educators learn about and teach language assessment. So we decide to become teachers. We do a training course, and then the teacher educator, they teach us about assessment because we assume that they know about assessment. Isn't that right? So asking this question, there were some interesting points about this study. But just to give you the context, the study involved 20 English teacher educators and 6 Chilean EFL teacher education programs. Also, there were interviews and course document analysis throughout the study, so you can read more about it. There are lots of interesting details. And they focused on 2 groups of teacher educators. First, the assessment specialists, the language testing educators who deliver courses specifically on assessment, yeah? So they teach assessment-focused courses. And the other group of educators was the language educators. So teacher trainers like I have been most of my career. I taught courses such as CELTA, so we teach about how to teach skills, how to develop language, how to work with grammar, etc., including how to do assessment. So it was a second category, the educators who teach language proficiency courses, and of course they assess their student teachers, and this assessment serves as a model, yeah, for those teachers. And the research question in the study had this twofold. How do teacher educators learn about language assessment? That was the first part. And how they teach assessment to future language teachers. Very interesting points that we can see in this study. And when I think about it, I like to go like one step back. The study was about teacher educators, but my focus was to kind of go one step back and consider teachers. Think about us. How do we teachers learn about language assessment? Then this is the moment when I'm going to ask you to pair up and share some ideas. And I have a question for you. How do teachers learn about language assessment? Think about you up to this point. How did you learn about language assessment considering the knowledge that you have now? How did you learn it? Option 1, did you learn it in your degree course or in a training course to become a teacher? Did you learn it on the job? You started teaching and then you started learning about assessment? Or any other way, in which case described. So I'm going to give you about a minute. Turn to someone next to you and answer the question, how did you learn about language assessment? Very, very nice, very nice. Now, as I said to you at the beginning, I would like you to participate. So there are some microphones around the room. We have Ana and Amanda, and also Sergio. So who would like to share an idea of how you learned about language assessment? Who would like to share some thoughts? How did you learn about it? We have one hand up over here, another hand up over here. We have 3 microphones in the room, so one hand up, okay, fantastic. So we're going to get the answer from that end, and then I'll bring another microphone. Is it working? No? Okay. Who would like to answer from this end?
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
I think I learned in all situations, but more on the job, because I have the responsibility to train my students, and that's challenging because they have different needs. So I have to study a lot. I have to think about all the kinds of assessment they need, and that's more on the job. Yeah.
Thanks. What's your name, please?
I'm sorry, I forgot it. My name is Valdirene. You can call me Val.
Val. Thank you, Val. So I'll bring my microphone here.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Is it? Yeah. Okay. So I'm Gustavo. I learned about assessment on my 3rd job when I had an appropriate training, but I started learning way more when I started talking to teacher trainers and attending conferences, basically.
Okay. In which case, it didn't include your degree or a training course?
Not at all,
Okay.
unfortunately.
All right. Any other ideas? Any more hands up? One more just behind you, Sergio. Yeah.
My name is Jussara. Hello. It's really common to copy what you've learned on your childhood or with your language teachers that you had previously.
Thank you, Jussara. And okay, one more.
Hello, Alberto. Hello, everyone. Eu sou a Mili. I've learned first on the job because my degree was not in education. I was a public relations before becoming a teacher. But then I had the responsibility towards other teachers, so I studied and studied. I took part in many conferences. I took like maybe 1 or 2 modules in Canada when I studied there, but my first experience was on the job.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, this is very interesting to see because it seems to be an international trend that we learn about assessment on the job. And I don't think the study will show a different result, yeah? But we are talking about language language awareness literacy, language assessment literacy. But what is LAL in other words? I'm going to bring here a definition that was published in this very short article written by Professor Gladys Quevedo Camargo for the Brastizo Echoes edition last year. So if you are a Brastizo member, you can access all the previous editions of the Echoes magazine, and it has interesting articles by many ELT colleagues and specialists like Professor Gladys Quevedo Camargo, right? So, according to this definition that Professor Gladys quotes in her article, language assessment literacy is about knowing how and what we are assessing. And it's also about knowing the best way to assess specific aspects of the teaching and learning process. It's also knowing how to generate reliable data about students' performance, what to do with this data, and how to interpret them. And also knowing which problems to expect, and finally, what to do to avoid them. It's such a big definition, isn't it? With this definition in mind, I want to do first self-assessment and reflection. In relation to this definition, how much do you know about assessment on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 means my baby steps into assessment awareness, and 10, I know all of this and I do all of this. Think about it, then turn to someone next to you and share your self-assessment. On a scale from 1 to 10, how assessment aware are you in light of the definition?
Lá na frente tem vários lugares ali. Bem ali na frente. Isso, você pode ir para o corredor aqui.
All right, I won't ask you to answer this in the open space because I think it's a personal reflection. And this is packed with a lot of information and a lot of competencies. In many cases, we cannot get a 10 out of this because it's a process. It's a process that we delve into, we learn, we see other people doing it, we do things wrong, and then we do them better when we learn from mistakes. So just see your development into LOL as a process, yeah? Some of us here are beginning our careers as teachers. Some of us here have been in the career for 40 years, not my case, but see this as a process, yeah, that we need to learn about this more and more every day. So this article, in particular from this volume of Studies in Language Testing, which was conducted by Villa Larenas and Brunford in Chile, it shows interesting views from research. One of the views is that, for example, many language teachers worldwide, they feel underprepared for assessment. So if you felt underprepared, you are not alone. This happens worldwide with many language teachers, yeah? And the reason is that language assessment training in teacher education is often very limited. I must say that my initial training to start to teach, I didn't have any training in assessment. I had to do what the school told me to do. Yeah? And later, we started learning, and then I did do courses on language assessment. Other interesting points or evidence from this research shows that, for example, teachers frequently report insufficient assessment training. They do the assessment because it's the routine of the institution or because this is how they were assessed, so they just replicate the model, yeah? But then they report insufficient assessment training. They also say that assessment literacy is essential for effective teaching and learning. Training is insufficient, however, it's a very important competence to develop, yeah? They also say that improving language assessment literacy in teacher education and in teachers as well, that was my addition to this sentence, can improve classroom assessment practices and student learning outcomes. And they also say that, according to the study, assessment literacy is not optional. We all do assessment, so it's a core component of effective language teaching. Hence, the importance of bringing language assessment literacy to a conference such as this, yeah? So, going back to the study about teacher educators, the question was about how teacher educators learn about assessment. So you will find a surprising finding from the study, the way they learn about assessment and how they do it as well. But before we go any further, I have another question for you to talk together in pairs. How do you learn about assessment? Because you have to do your assessment. For example, do you do classroom tests with your students? Classroom tests, midterm, end of term, yeah? Do you do projects with your students and they have to get a grade for participating? Yeah? Okay. Do you do quizzes before the exam? Do you prepare students for international exams? Yeah? So we are all working with assessment all the time. But how do you learn about assessment? What do you do to make sure that what you are doing is effective? Share your ideas with somebody next to you for about a minute, and then I'm going to invite some contributions, okay?
That's good.
All right. Thank you very much. There are some microphones around the room. So, who would like to share some thoughts? How do you learn about assessment? Raise your hand so we can bring a microphone to you. Okay, we have one hand up over here. More hands up. Who would like to share an idea?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning again, Roberto. My name is Ludmila. Well, I haven't been trained for that in my graduation. It's been a long time. I'm getting older. But nowadays and over these years, I have been reading a lot. And after we read, it's important that we do something that we call in Portuguese, tentativa e erro. You know, you read and then with your groups, you test. Some of these things actually work and others don't. So then we retrace the route and keep going. So It's a mix of things. We attend courses, we attend lectures, we read, and then tentativa e erro. We try to see what actually works with our groups.
Yeah. Absolutely, Ludmila. Thank you. More contributions? We have another hand up here for Anna. There.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. So my name is Kayo. I've been a teacher for about 8 years now. And when I first started, I felt that I learned how to correct students, but I haven't learned how to actually help them improve their language. So it was very how to. And later in my career, I had the chance to engage in courses and training in my degree. And when I got in touch with theory, I felt like I could actively help my students to learn because unfortunately, when we engage in how doing things, we are apart from the reflection part. And I think that's also very important when we are teachers.
Thank you, Caio. Very interesting account. Yes, sometimes we learn how to do things, but not how to make the most of it or collect the data or the evidence from it. Thank you. One more contribution from there or from here? Okay.
Hello, good morning. I'm Samantha, and I've learned assessment.
Samantha, can you speak a bit louder?
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
I've learned assessment, and I've been learning, right? But I think it's a good idea to connect follow-up questions with the lesson goals. I think it's nice.
Good. So you add questions to main questions that you bring to class as a support. Okay. One more hand.
Hello, everyone. My name is Guilherme, and I've been a teacher for 6 years. Okay, guys, I know that I'm baby here, okay? But I think it is pretty interesting when you think about assessment, because you have the opportunity to access a community, a global community. So through the Cambridge TKT assessment, now I have a group that I can connect myself with different global educations in different countries, and I think this is fine because you can refresh your knowledge about teaching, and then you keep studying. I think this is very important, more than salary or job opportunities. It is you keep studying, and then you keep improving yourself, your knowledge skills. I think that's fine.
Thanks. Like a continuous process, right?
Yeah, continuous process. Thank
Yeah,
you.
assessment is such a vast area. We cannot learn everything at one go. We have to keep learning by all means. So thank you for that. So going back to the studies about the teacher educators, the surprising finding is that most participants, the educators, they did not receive formal language assessment training. But they teach teachers about assessment, yeah? How did they learn about assessment then to a level that qualifies them to teach assessment to other teachers? Well, they started learning on the job. So if we are learning on the job, we are doing the right thing, yeah, according to the study. Also collaborating with colleagues, teachers preparing assessment together, discussing assessment together. And then we start learning more and collaborating more with colleagues. Lots of them did self-study and professional reading, so reading research on assessment, or maybe doing self-study, finding out, going to the internet, etc. And also, lots of them learned from trial, reflection, and adaptation. So if you are trying things out, checking how they work, if at all, and then trying them again, you are learning about assessment, because the educators have been learning like that. They also mentioned the importance of communities of practice. What are we talking about? They reported that learning about assessment was most effectively through, for example, sharing ideas with communities, other colleagues, maybe a global community, participating in Brazil. So coming to Cambridge Day, yeah, Also, they said that co-designing assessments was a very good learning curve for them. So preparing it together, conversations in the teacher's room, discussing marking decisions, yeah? So whether or not the marking that you chose is or is not appropriate helps them to develop and enhance their language assessment literacy, and also reflecting together. So you see, many of the things that you mentioned that you are doing, the educators have been doing. And of course, now they're ready to teach teachers. If we have the opportunity to take courses, that's good. But it's by doing all those things that we develop our awareness about assessment according to the study. And there is a key point about it. Assessment literacy develops socially, not just through courses. So it's like Vygotsky, right? You learn from the more able peer. And then you develop your knowledge about assessment and your awareness as well. So the more you can engage, the better, yeah? The other thing is how those educators taught assessment to student teachers, yeah? They mentioned two powerful strategies. One of them was modeling. So those educators, they did their assessment of their student teachers, and that served as a model for those teachers, yeah? So things, for example, the rubrics that they designed to assess teachers in the teaching courses. Also, the tasks that they created for those teachers, they served as a model for the student teachers. The way they gave feedback as well was a model, and marking, the way they marked student work, in this case, student teachers, and that served as a model for those teachers. The other powerful strategy was reflection. So those student teachers, they were encouraged to, for example, analyze assessment practices, including the ones that that the educators used with them, and also to critique the assessment tools, which would work best for which purpose. For example, by reflecting on assessment decisions as well, and connecting theory and practice, yeah? So it seems that this social cultural aspect of learning about assessment happens everywhere, all the time. And that brings us to another key point. Assessment literacy grows when teachers experience assessment, not just study it. We can read and read and read more about it, but we need to experience assessment, yeah? We design tests, tasks, activities for the classroom, we devise the rubrics, but it's always a good idea to critique what we do. Did it work? Why not? What changes do I need to make to my assessment practices, etc., etc. Yeah? Because insufficient language assessment literacy can bring us risks and problems. Can you think of any problems associated with insufficient language assessment literacy? 13 seconds, turn to someone next to you and think about a risk or a problem related to this. All right. Professor Gladys mentions some of those problems in this short article from Brastiso Eccles. Yeah, one of the problems is, for example, Teachers will not encourage students to act critically in relation to feedback. So teachers just give them a mark, and that's it. So working on quality feedback is essential for their knowledge development. But if we don't do it, yeah, this brings a risk. Yeah. Did you think about this in your discussion? Yeah. Okay. Another problem that Professor Gladys mentioned is that teachers may fail to prepare students to deal with assessment. So, in other words, they are not taught that assessment is more about achieving goals and less about getting grades. Yeah. Assessment is there to support learning, not only to measure learning. Yeah, it's basically to support learning. A third problem is that teachers and school authorities may not guide students and other stakeholders to properly interpret the scores attributed by teachers. Lastly, another problem is that teachers may not be open to criticism in relation to how they assess. And this affects the role that assessment plays in students' progress and also in our own professional development. So if you get feedback on the way you do your assessment, be open to it. Go back, reflect. Maybe there's something true there, and that will be a stepping stone to increase your language assessment literacy. Yeah? And what can you do to enhance your language assessment literacy? Well, you can find out more about integrating learning and assessment. So that is one step that you can take. And for the past, for last year and this year, we have been talking a lot about the Cambridge approach to ILA, or to integrated learning and assessment. And here are the 4 pillars. So the more you find out about setting learning objectives, collecting evidence of progress, providing actionable feedback, and giving tailored follow-up to learners, the better. And if you go to cambridge.org/ILA, there is a hub with lots of content about it, everything for you to access for free. Yeah? And also consider that many of the things that we already do in class, they are classroom-based assessment practices, because assessment is not just a test, yeah, not just a project. For example, in class, sometimes we give spontaneous feedback. When students are, for example, discussing something or doing a presentation, we maybe give good feedback on an expression that they used, or maybe on how they put an argument together. Does this happen in your classes? You didn't plan, but suddenly you give students feedback. Yeah? So if you do that, you are already enhancing your language assessment literacy. Also, when we do, for example, co-construction of meaning or topic or form, for example, students are using a word, and then you intervene to say, yes, this word means that, but a better word would be this. So, does it happen in your classes? This is classroom-based assessment practice, yeah? Also, subject content and activities that need to be given emphasis. If students are doing a presentation, for example, you say, yes, you said that the focus of your presentation is on deforestation, but how about adding maybe percentages of deforestation in your presentation? You are not a specialist in this area, but you are helping adult learners, for example, to focus on what they are saying better. Has it happened to you? Yeah? Alternative assessments. Have you used or do you use portfolios, reflective journals, self and peer assessments, scaffolding students' learning, like giving them language support, or maybe one idea from Samantha, giving the students The sentence, what's the name that you call when? Oh no, when you have the sentences for the speaking bank, yeah, the speaking banks, yeah, ways of scaffolding student learning. Do those things happen in your class? Yeah. Using strategies to enhance learning. For example, look, if you read the text and focus on those headings on top of the paragraphs, you get a better sense of you get a general idea of the text. Have you done anything like it? Or if you say, okay, when you listen for the first time, don't worry about answering the questions. Just listen and get a general understanding. So you are helping the students to use strategies to enhance their learning. And also, when, for example, you organize and manage the assessment process. In other words, when you tell the students, look, we're having the exam, and the exam lasts 30 minutes. Make sure that you focus on question 2 first to get rid of it. So you are helping the students to manage the assessment process. Have you done that before? Yeah? If you have done any of those 6 things here, they are the top 6 classroom-based assessment practices that form part of this study in volume 26. The study is putting LAL into practice. What happens in classrooms and why? I highly recommend reading this study in volume 56. Yeah? Another thing you can do is access the teacher guides that we have available on our website, cambridgeenglish.org, exam preparation. We have guides for all the levels and for all the skills, and they help you develop your assessment practice, competencies, helping the students for the exam, but also for language learning in general. Yeah? Some key insights to finish off. Language assessment literacy develops through practice, doing the assessment, collaboration with peers, reflecting, professional dialogue, the dialogue that we have with colleagues, with specialists, yeah? And effective assessment learning is by all means social. It's context specific. The assessment that somebody does in Ukraine may not be applicable to what we do in Brazil. So it has to be context specific. It's ongoing. We are learning every day, yeah? And it's grounded in real classroom challenges. So the challenge that you have, they are not a stumbling block. They can be a stepping stone to your language assessment literacy, yeah? Because assessment literacy is built through participation, not transmission, and it develops socially, as we mentioned before, and not just through courses. A key point from the study. Okay, the topic was assessment literacy, assess, inform, and transform. Use assessment purposefully and align it with your learning goals. Goals and assessment has to work closely together. And use evidence of this assessment to guide teaching and support learners. That's the inform part. And of course, with your knowledge, transform, develop your literacy through collaboration, reflective practice, communities of practice, form a community or join a community, and continuous professional learning, yeah? To finish off, finally, what did we learn after this session? We talked about LAL and why it matters. Did we? Now it's your turn to assess me, yeah? Whether or not I met the objectives. We talked about what LAL is, how teachers learn about assessment, some risks related to it, what you can do to enhance your LAL, yeah? Remember to access the sources and resources and consider how you can continue to develop your LAL after this event. Yeah? These are some of the references that I mentioned already throughout the presentation. And thank you very much, everyone, for listening, for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto.
That
So,
was great.
Alberto, I guess that we are all living today with so many ideas, right? Alberto, right now we do have a question for you. We're going to start from questions in our live audience, right? Would anyone like to ask a question?
It's so hard to see from up here.
Oh, over there?
Over
Gustavo,
there.
right? Is it Gustavo? So,
Yeah.
can anyone help
Well,
us?
well, while the microphone is getting to him, Sergio, over here, fourth row. Yeah. There. Stop. There you go.
Thank you. It's me again. In the beginning, you showed us the stakeholders, and each one of them have different expectations. So my question to you is how to deal with all of those, like being a teacher, being in the middle of the tug of war, and high hopes. People have high hopes and expectations on your work. So how dealing with that?
Well, so far, our career hasn't been impacted, yeah? But I think one of the things we can do is share some of this knowledge with, for example, learners, parents, and also school leaders, because school leaders may not be specialists in language teaching or language assessment, yeah? And bring the community together so we can influence more positively the assessment practices in our context.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Should we do one online?
Yeah,
Let's do from our online viewers. This question actually was asked by two people from your land, Recife. So Livia and Andrew from Recife, they ask, what are the best activities and strategies to help students become more confident when they tackle Cambridge tests?
Okay. Well, I could spend a whole morning talking about this. But one of the things that I like doing with learners for them to become more relaxed and more familiarized with the exam is treasure hunt. Treasure hunt is like this. Give them a mock test, but tell them not to answer the items. Ask them questions about the structure of the exam. For example, how many items are there in the use of English paper? How many questions do you have to answer for? How many words do you need to include in your writing? Get them to become familiarized and reduce their anxiety. A lot of it is about anxiety. And then learners will become more relaxed, knowing what to expect.
I love that idea.
So do I.
And it's such a
Great.
simple activity. I love that idea.
Treasure hunt.
Yeah, treasure hunt. On the spot for you. Yeah? I think we have time for one more online.
Yeah.
Yeah? Online, no, sorry. Here from the live audience.
Anyone?
Over there?
Over
Yeah.
there?
Hello again, Millie again, Alberto. Alberto, my question needs some context, okay? We work in a bilingual program, but the owners and coordinators at school, they don't speak English, so all the responsibility lies on us. So in the beginning of the program, we set a formal assessment with the students, like to learn a little bit about their background. But what I want to know is your opinion. We intend to use that, like we intend to give them a second assessment, and we intend even to make like a portfolio to show the parents really about their development. What do you think about that?
Each context is different, and decisions are also made based on a number of things, right? I think what you need to consider is, if you look at the full program that you need to deliver for your learning community, what is it that is important to assess in terms of skills and knowledge? What are the priorities? Because, I mean, it's difficult to assess everything, and we cannot spend like the program giving a test after a test. So I think we need to consider a balance, striking a balance between classroom-based assessment, what teachers can do through elicitation questions, success criteria, and then you can set moments for more formal assessment and strike a balance there, because assessment can happen throughout and in many different forms.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alberto.
Thank you, Alberto.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll take that.
Well, Alberto, thank you so much for those valuable insights. I'm sure that we are all leaving this session with a new perspective on how language assessment can make our teaching more effective and our learners more successful, right, Rebecca?
Of course. I love how Alberto gives us so much information and takes away that myth of assessment, that it's something that's difficult. So that for me is my greatest takeaway always.